Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, a podcast wherein I interview performers, promoters, fans and most especially comedians about what comedy actually is and what it means to them, through shows they've seen, through their own experiences, or if they wish, through expressive dance, although I appreciate that might not work on an audio medium. I love talking to the people in comedy about comedy, and if you like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. Like most of the creatives I talk to, my guest this episode has a glorious CV of acting, presenting, singing, dancing, but above all for me, she's a musical comedian, one with a joyous, upbeat personality and positive outlook that helped her get all the way to the semi-finals of this year's Britain's Got Talent. It is, of course, Abi Carter-Simpson. So, Abi, you're a singer, actress, presenter, comedian, primary school teacher. Where do you find yourself? Where do you sit? Are you a teacher who does comedy? Are you a musician who acts?
It's an interesting question, actually. I know, I was just listening to that, like sort of jack of all trades, master of all of them, I'm going to say. So I'd say, so I started off as an actor. So when I was younger, I just loved musicals. Like, it was just a bit of me. And I know it's a real sort of a divided room. I know some people are like, oh, honestly, I just get them off. But when I was little, I just loved it. I used to just listen to sort of all like the old 1950s and 60s musicals back all to the 1930s. My grandfather's a massive influence in both my comedy and my musical theatre love. And he was always used to sing sort of musicals to me and that kind of thing. Yeah. So from there, I was like, all right, I want to be on stage. That's it. That's all I want to do. So I went to drama school, trained in musical theatre. So that was about 13 years ago now. And then it was just a progression from there. So I was an actor all the way, actor, musician, singer and everything, up until just before COVID, so about 2017. And that's where I started doing comedy. Because it was a strain. It wasn't a strain or anything. It was a strand. It was a strand of performing that I'd never done before. But I'd always been doing sort of like comedic roles and sketch comedy and that kind of thing. So I was like, right, let's give it a go. And the beautiful thing about comedy, I find, especially from an acting background, is that you can absolutely 100% be yourself on stage. Whatever you determine that self to be, obviously it is an extension of yourself, because you wouldn't want to give all of yourself away on stage, or maybe you would. But it's that thing, and I think that's one of the main parts of acting that I found really hard in terms of the rejection side, was that, you know, it's, oh, you're not at the time, for me personally, everyone's journeys are different, but for me personally, it was like, oh, you're not this enough, or you're not something else enough. So to go on stage and to be right, this is me, I can say what I want to say, and that was completely freeing for me. So I would say that's a really good question. I'd say I'm all of it. Yeah. Because I trained, I'm a very new teacher. I actually trained as a teacher during COVID. So I'm 31 now. So I'm slightly late to the game. But it was a beautiful thing that came out of COVID, because I was lost. Like, I just didn't know what to do. And so I started working as a TA. And then from there, they said to me, would you like to train as a teacher? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I did my first year in year 6 last year. And then I've transformed into the music teacher this year, which is nice, because again, it's going back to all of the stuff that I actually sort of trained in and I'm incredibly passionate about. I think music and performing is like what young people should have every single day if they can, because it's completely life-changing for confidence and all that kind of thing. So I do believe in life you can be as many things as you want to be. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself. And at some point, you'll be able to make them all work in harmony. It's just trying to find out how that actually works. Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful introduction, because you've brought up so many things I want to talk to you about.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, Abby. It's been real.
And sort of like teased the way in there. One thing that I often like to talk about, and you mentioned about an acting background, and then you talked about comedically being freeing, being yourself. Because of an acting background, do you find yourself portraying Abby the character on stage, or how much are you playing a role that is a stage Abby?
Yeah, I think when I first started out, and I think it's probably the same with like quite a lot of comics. If you look back, I mean, I don't think I have any old videos anymore, which I'm quite upset about, because they were a real treat for the ears and eyes. But I think when you first start out, well, me personally, I really sort of heightened everything. Right. So even, just sort of listening to your voice, I was like, I don't normally sound like that. And I think that was the sort of acting background coming in. I was like, right, I'm sort of playing this character. Right. But I think one of the hardest parts of comedy is finding your natural voice on stage and being able to say jokes that have punchlines, but they sound like you're saying it for the first time. And I guess that's one of the same sort of similarities with acting, is this: if you're a good actor and if you're a stage actor and you're doing the same show 8 shows a week, you want the audience to see a show. This is what we were always told. You want the audience to watch a show that looks like that's the first time you've ever performed it. You don't want to go to the theatre and watch someone looking like they've done this for like 2 years. You want it to be like a unique experience. So I think that has absolutely come with time. In the grand schemes of comedy, I'm still relatively new to it. I've been going since, like I said, sort of 2017, 2018. And I think that's something that I'm, over the last probably like 2 years, I'm finally I am pretty much me on stage. And I think that comes with a sort of, let's just see what happens attitude. Yeah. Let's just go and see. And, the audience are on your side. The audience want to have a good time. The audience want to have fun. Yeah. And I think sometimes you can get really in your own head and be like, oh, what if I'm this or what if I'm... It's like they're not here to... Sometimes it feels in comedy clubs like they're there to sort of go, right, this wasn't very good. But actually, they're out on a Friday night. They've paid money. They want to be entertained. They want to be enjoyed. So as soon as you realise that and you go, right, if I have a good time, they'll have a good time. And then something that comes out of that as well is being able to recreate that, even if maybe personally you're not having such a great day. Right. Do you know what I mean? Because that's I think that's if you had an awful day, you're not feeling too good, it's trying to like dig deep and go, right, okay, switch it on. Yeah. Because my style of comedy is myself, which is very energetic and very sort of, I am a very like, I hate saying the word smiley because it makes me sound, oh, she's so smiling. But I am sort of that kind of person anyway. So it would be weird. I think if I was playing a character, sort of doing more character comedy, I'd be going on stage and being incredibly sort of deadpan. And that's not me. So they do see the most of me on stage, I would say.
Yeah. So at what point did comedy come into it then? Because obviously you talked about acting and performance. At what point did you turn around and say, well, okay, I want to be more funny than straight acting?
Yeah, so when I was at drama school, I would always be cast as like the comedic roles in sort of the third year. When in third year drama school, you do a load of like full performances, musicals, and you do them in theatres, and then they basically invite casting directors and agents, and that's how you try and get signed basically before you leave. Right. And I remember like in the third year, I would always play these comedy roles, but for some reason in most of the musical theatre that we did, all of these comedy roles were sort of like old alcoholic sort of Broadway, do you know what I mean? So they just put me in like an ill-fitting wig and be like, oh, that's fine, and then I left and realised, like, I was 21 when I left and I looked incredibly young for my age. I think my first audition was it was like a think big. I thought life was going to be like this afterwards, and then it went not that. So my first ever audition was, the Into the Woods film, the Disney film. Yes, yeah. So that was my first ever audition out of drama school. Wow. And I was up for the part of Little Red. And I don't know if you've seen the film, but she's actually played by an 8-year-old. So I remember rocking up to the audition, like with my singing music in my hand. I was like, oh, God, I'm so excited. And I walked in and it was literally me, a load of 8-year-olds and their mums. And I was like, what's going on? And I went in, there was this American woman and she was like, yeah, we're just sort of like seeing which way we're going to go. And I was like, when I saw the film, I was like, well, they went with the child. But so I look very young. So then all of a sudden, when you go into the industry, you get a playing age I would be playing a 55-year-old at 21. I'd be playing maybe a 17 to 21-year-old. So it was sort of trying to navigate that. And then in 2016, I picked up the ukulele.
Yeah.
Actually, again, because of something called there's like actor musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're at drama school, when I was there, I learnt to tap, jazz, ballet, that whole triple threat thing. And then we left and actor musicians became a massive thing. And so you'd done all this stuff and they were like, great, and what instrument do you play? And I was like, I don't play one. Great. So I picked up the ukulele because I won't lie, it is, I don't want to, do a disservice to myself, but it's the easiest instrument to play. 4 strings, they're made of nylon, it's not difficult. And so that's how I learned how to do that. So then I started writing my own songs, just sort of a bit of creativity. And I've always loved Victoria Wood. She's like, I used to watch Stop Growing Hair, so that sort of gave me inspiration. And then I did a show called News Review, which is a staple in Edinburgh every year. It's been going for like I don't know how long it's been going for, but it's been literally going decades. Really long time.
35 years, something like that.
Yeah. So I did that in London, and then I did the run in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And I just got the bug after that. Just hearing the like sort of laughter coming from things I'd written, because I wrote loads of parody songs, and the 4 people who do the show and the director and sort of the writers. You get stuff sent in, but most of it comes from you. Yeah. So after that, I was like, I absolutely love it. And I think also as well, the immediate reaction of laughter, you just know straight away if something's working.
Yeah.
Whereas in the acting profession, you could go to an audition, think you smashed it, and then you don't hear back ever again. They can say you're so wonderful, and then you go, God, I've got this in the bag, I've already spent the money, this is amazing, and then you're like, no, I've heard absolutely nothing back. So and it's just something I just loved it. It just was like such an opening of a world for me. And the fact that living in London, all of a sudden I was like, I can just go online, I can just contact someone, I can get 5 minutes in a pub somewhere, and I can stand on a stage, whatever that stage may be, and I can say things that I've written, and I just absolutely loved it. I just thought it was great, and then that's just something that I've always and it's also it's a massive it is really hard. Do you know what I mean? It isn't as in terms of like it's not. You have to really really work at it. Do you know what I mean? To get results. And I think that's it as well. It's not just like, right, this comes really easily, I'm gonna go and do it, and then that's it. So it's you putting the time into creating and then seeing what it gives you. I just think it's a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cry.
You mentioned earlier, you said you used the word smiley. I like to say joyful, uplifting.
Love it.
So were you mindful going in that you wanted to write things that were positive messages, that you wanted to write uplifting songs?
Do you know what? I think it's always just been, like you said, sort of just like my personality. I like being silly. I like silliness. That's what I like. And so I also think that words hold a lot of weight, and it's all about your own sort of personal journeys. Do you know what I mean? And like when I was younger and that kind of thing, I think I would probably have wanted to hear someone doing, a positive message or making a positive message but funny at the same time, because I am also like on stage I'm quite self-deprecating at times. That's sort of like as stuff that I do on stage, but as I've gotten older, I just like talking about things or subjects that we can all relate to, and sort of just find the funniness in life and in normality. I think that's a really nice thing to do. Just like the mundane is just, it can have a really funny spin. I mean, on Britain's Got Talent, obviously I did the 2 songs, and I thought for that particular gig, I wanted to do something that would like you said, it like send a message.
Yeah.
Because especially the Princess song, I wrote that specifically for the show because, again, it was something that growing up, I've always thought that. And I thought, right, if now's the time to do it. Do you know what I mean? And so when I got given that opportunity, I was like, right, this is a moment, and I can write something that hopefully will not just, because the thing is, like, it's a family show, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that even if a child was watching, and that's probably from becoming a teacher as well, they're watching it. So I was like, right, if I can not only sort of connect with the adults, the parents who are watching it, because it is mostly families who watch it, if I can also, connect with a child sitting there who might be having a rubbish time at school or might not quite know who they are or that kind of thing, if that 2.5 minutes on stage not only make them laugh but also make them think, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to go out tomorrow and I'm going to be a fabulous human, then good. Do you know? So that's sort of why I did that.
So you wrote that specifically for that appearance?
Yeah, I'd had the idea.
Right.
I'd had the idea for ages. And then I'd sort of, once I got through the first round, I had like 4 different ideas. And that one I just sort of like stuck with. So I wrote it, and then I was just sort of like doing it round every time I had a gig. I just sort of do it at the end. And it was getting good reception. And also as well, like, obviously, like, the chorus is quite sort of like, you can be whoever you want to be. So I can see sometimes it'd be like, why is she singing this like on this Saturday night? Everyone's just like, forget about their lives and just laugh about silly stuff. And there's me like, go be yourself, be amazing. So there's me like, oh God, what's she banging on about? But yeah, so I did it, and then it sort of went from there really. So it was a nice one to do.
Yeah. And
also as well, the reason I wrote it, this is one of the main reasons I wrote it as well, I'll give you a little anecdote. I played Snow White in a panto a few years ago, and got cast as Snow White herself, and it was the producer, she was amazing. She was like, I just want a feisty woman to play the princess. And I was like, great, I can totally do that, right? And I remember some things. It was like, it was like an older script, and it would be like Snow White comes on sweeping, and I'd be like, I'd look at the scripts and I was like, does she have to? Like, and I was like, can she not be banging in a nail or something? Do you know what I mean? Like, just let's switch up a little bit here. So I got to do that kind of bit. But then I got, when you do shows and stuff, you do that, they do like production shots, obviously, like same as in comedy.
Yeah.
And I got an email like a few weeks in after the production shots had been put out from another member of like the creative team. I won't go too much into it, but he basically wrote this really long email about the fact that my face wasn't, and I'll use the words, princessy enough.
Wow.
Yeah. So he said, and this was like CC'd like all of the other creators in, produced all this kind of stuff, and I was only like 23, 24 at the time, and at the bottom he said this, so I don't think you're really portraying the princess side of things. And then he said, please see attached, and the attached was pictures of my face on the stage. And I look back at that moment, and I remember reading it at the time, and I cried, but I didn't do anything about it. I thought it was my fault. I was like, oh my goodness, like, I need to be better. I need to try and change this, because, in acting, you get directions, right? You get directed. But now I was like, if that happened to me now, I would be bowling in there being like, you wouldn't be able to say that now anyway, because what constitutes a princess in life anyway? It's just absolutely wild. So I think I've had that in my head ever since. Right. So I was like, right, here we go. Now's the time.
Okay.
Do so it's things like that, they just sort of stick with you. So that was another sort of that's another reason why I wrote the song. But it's wild, isn't it?
So a tiny corner of that song at the back of your mind is
take that. Exactly. It's like, look at me now. Is this princessy enough for you?
Wow. I love that. So what about surprises? I mean, we've got 2 layers here, because when you start doing comedy 2017, 2018, and it's I'm going to go and do stand up, I'm going to do musical comedy, I'm going to stand out there alone, I'm not in an ensemble cast anymore.
Yeah.
What expectations did you have? What surprises did you find? And then also, let's take that forward a few years, and then you say, oh, I'm going to go and audition for BGT. What expectations and surprises came there?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. I think it's when you first start out, I can only speak for myself as well, but you're so all your brain is thinking about is those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you're like sat in that room, and it could be like, you know, when you first start out, there could be like 75 other comics doing 5 minutes at the same time. You couldn't listen to one sentence that anyone else has said. You're just sitting on the chair going, right, okay, I'm going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, then maybe they'll laugh here, but maybe they won't. So I think one of the things you start to learn is that you need to listen to what's happening in the room in order to make yourself sort of relevant. And that's something that I love, you know, you have to do later on. It's like you need to embrace what everyone is saying in the room rather than just what you're doing. Because I remember when I first started, like, say I had a bit of material about a certain something, and then someone would come on before and say something very similar.
Right.
I would not reference it and then just say sort of like the same thing. And then you're like, you need to reference what someone else has said. Otherwise you need to incorporate them both, because it means that you're not present in the room. Yeah. So I think that was one of the surprises that I had. Another surprise that I had was sort of realizing as well that, like, trying to pick yourself up after a gig doesn't go quite so well.
Right.
Do you know, that was one of the things that is, you know, now it's like, well, that happened. We move. Don't worry about it. It's fine. But at the time, you know, you go, God, why? Like, asking yourself the question, like, why did that work yesterday, and why didn't that work today? And also, as well, sort of doing your homework, I think, is really important. Like when you're traveling up and down the country, you know, you need to be relevant to everybody. And so I think that's something that you really have to learn, and you realise that is an actual integral part. You're not just rocking up and doing your 20 minutes or whatever. Yeah. You have to make sure that people can, whilst you're still being yourself and you're still sticking to yourself and being, you know, what you are as comedy, I think you need to be, like, aware of what the world is like around that place, and sort of making them, when you first step out on stage, because they've probably, if they're going to see a comedy show that you're in, if they've not heard of you before, they've probably Googled you. Yeah. So why shouldn't you, like, get knowledge about where you're going as well? Do you know? I think it's like it's a two-way street. So I think that's something as well that I've learned. Yeah. In terms of Britain's Got Talent, do you know what? I think in the grand scheme of things, there were no massive surprises for me. Okay. Which I think is good. There was I had a few bits of anxiety here and there, but obviously because it was just the unknown. But I think it came at a time where I was prepared for it. Like everything up to that point, I think sort of made me ready for what I was going to do. For example, I know it sounds slightly odd, but I was just thinking back when I was doing it. It was even little things like working in front of a camera or working on a film set. Yeah. So I'd done some TV and adverts up until that point, so the cameras didn't faze me. Right. I'd also a few years ago done a singing competition for the BBC, like very early on, which it happened, but and it's funny as well. It was before I ever started comedy, so like Rob Beckett was hosting it. But I just look at myself and I go, God, that's wild. Like, you had no idea what was coming for you in the next few years. Like, there was you just. And the thing is as well, like at that time, I never really was just like a singer. Right. And again, it just both that one and this and Richard's just sort of happened, and I did like that one. I don't remember, it just came through my agent. She's like, "Oh, do you want to go for it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I just sent a tape of me singing, and then I just like they were like, "Yeah, so you're through," and I was like, "Through to what?" And they were like, "Oh, you're through to the show," and I was like, "I'm so totally not prepared for this." So I think doing a reality TV show, in a sense, right. I'd already done it, so I sort of knew about the waiting around process, the long days, the interviews, because I remember when I did that one, the BBC one, I came off stage and I was so sort of overwhelmed by the fact that I'd just done that and it had been filmed and all this kind of stuff. And I remember the woman was asking me questions and I hadn't got through to the next part, and there was a camera on me straight away, and she was like, "Have you got anything, like, how do you feel?" And I literally had no words in my mouth. I was like, "I'm so sorry, I don't know what to say." Mm-hmm. So that experience, when I was doing BGT, I was like, okay, now I know that the cameras are going to be there all of the time, so you're always performing. Yeah. You might look like you're being natural, but you know that they can use absolutely everything. Like I think the beginning of my VT, right, on the first one, I tripped over as I came into the room. Yes, which was all
weirdly,
natural.
I remember that.
Yeah, but then it's that all of the other things come into play. It's like, I know that the cameras are rolling. I know that they're probably going to use that footage because it's funny. So you need to own it and make it a bit, rather than being like, "Oh, that's really embarrassing," because they can use that too. Do you know what I mean? So as soon as the cameras are on, you're making sure that everything that you're doing is like, it is a choice to an extent, but also if something does happen that you didn't mean to, you need to own it straight away. And so I think all of these things, and then before the live semi-finals, I'd done an interview for This Morning live, and they'd asked me to write a song for it. I'd had to sing live on TV, which I'd never done before. So then doing the Britain's Got Talent semi-finals, where I sang live, I was like, right, I've done it already. Therefore, it's not, I think had I not done that before and then I was doing it for the first time, then those nerves would have set in. So it's all of these things that sort of built up. The only thing that was a massive surprise to me were like those in-ears that you have to wear when you're doing music. That was my one. I was so terrified because you don't like when you're rehearsing, or like you come in on the day and you rehearse. Yeah. Oh, you rehearse once. You have like a 10 minutes, 15-minute spot on the stage, like a few days before to go through your bit, which is. I'm quite glad that I kept things quite minimal, because, you know, if I had a big sort of like background things going on behind me, I don't think I would have been able to cope. I was like, no, I just want me, a ukulele, that's it. That's it. Although I would have liked a firework. I keep thinking though, I look back, I was like, that would have been nice to have a bit of a pyrotechnic, but no, we moved. But the in-ears, you've got this like sort of, they're all talking in your ears, so like we're ready to go, 3, 2, 1, and then you have this man like counting in the track, like 3, 2, 1, go, and then you can mainly just hear the metronome, right? But I was completely new to that whole experience, and also like in Hammersmith Apollo, it's huge, so that was quite daunting. And when you're there on the day, you're not allowed anyone with you, no one like from your side, right. So they come and watch the show, but you're on your own. So that was my one thing. I had no one really in the audience throughout the day when I was rehearsing to be like, actually that was out of time, right. Or you were quite you didn't quite hit that bit. So that was the only thing that I was like terrified. And I remember this just like bizarre moment where I was super worried just before the show. I think it was like about an hour before the show went live, and I was like, I don't know if it's loud enough in my ears. I need to just recheck. So I was like, I had this amazing guy called Charlie who was like my go-to, like the whole thing. He's just like the most beautiful human ever. I said, I'm totally not a diva, but I really need to just make sure that this is fine. So I was just sat worried watching Diversity rehearse on the stage, and they were doing their whole routine, and it's obviously the most amazing routine. I remember just sitting there like, I can't even appreciate this because I'm so terrified that my in-ears aren't going to work. But it was all fine. They sorted it out, and it was great. But I'll have that memory sort of etched in my brain for a long time. So yeah, I think the surprises came with Britain's Got Talent, but. There were a few days that I was sort of running up to semi-finals that it is that sort of like, it's live. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's live, so anything can happen. But as soon as I got out on stage, I was like, right, we've just got to go and do this. Yeah. And it's 2.5 minutes, and then it's going to be over. So you might as well enjoy yourself. Do you know what I mean? You might as well enjoy it because it's never going to happen again. So.
You mentioned that when you were doing the VT where you tripped, obviously, and then you made a point of the fact that they can use that because it's funny. So you're basically doing a little bit of improv and adding that into the show.
Always working. So... always creating.
So where does improvisation come into your sets when you're performing in the Friday night clubs? You've written a song. Are you able to add in those local references? Do you do last minute rewrites?
Yeah.
Do you stop mid song and address the thing in the room?
Always, absolutely always, and that's something that's come with time. Obviously, I think at the beginning I was like, right, go on, do my stuff and then leave. Whereas now recently I'm doing quite a lot more MCing, which I love. And that obviously helps with improv greatly. Yeah. And like I did a gig literally 2 days ago, and I started that. It's one of the, like, you know, sometimes there's some gigs you do and you just feel incredibly free and you realise I've actually not said much of my material, because everything I say, I'm then sort of referencing it back to the audience or someone not afraid of. I can see someone's reaction if I say something, so I'll call the reaction out and then talk about that. But I started singing right at the end, and there was just a point where I stopped to say a punchline. There was a woman texting on her phone, so I called her out on it, and I said, "Are you right? Is everything okay?" So made like a big bit of that. And then I started singing again, and then she looked at her phone again. So I stopped, and then I haven't done it often, but it's something I really want to do, is I just on the spot wrote a song about her being on her phone. And I was like, I really enjoyed that. That was great. So yeah, I think doing sort of on the spot improv, I'm trying to more and more maybe incorporate that into the music side of things. Yeah. It doesn't have to be too long, but I think it's just something else that it's nice to have. It's nice to have moments when you're in a comedy club that, like, sort of it's just you and them experience. Yeah. And yeah, I think I find it difficult not to reference things that happen in the room. Like if something happens, I can't carry on. And I do believe that's down to when I became a teacher, because you're like batting off 30 heckles a day, like 30 heckles for 6 hours a day. And you have to, like, your reactions and your instincts have to be just like razor sharp. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise you wouldn't get through a day. Yeah. You have to make sure that they're sat listening. And so like yesterday, I did an amazing charity gig at Bristol Old Vic last night. And again, I started singing, and this guy in the rafters just sneezed. Like in the perfect moment. Like, it was like a beat, and then he sneezed. So I just looked straight up and just went very quietly, "Bless you." And it got like, and it's just that smallest thing. It's not even funny, but the fact that you referenced it in the room, it got a round of applause. Do you know what I mean? But only because you haven't ignored it. Everyone heard it. I think there's a really funny video of have you seen it of like an orchestra, and there's like a big silence, and then I think someone does like a big cymbal, and a man in the audience like screams, like, because he jumps.
I have not. I want to see it.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. But you can see the conductor just like sort of turns around and starts laughing, because it's like you need to, and that's the thing as well. It's like it's about being present. Do you know what I mean? It's about being present. It's about being in the room. Don't get me wrong. There are some gigs that you do that, you know, our brains are beautiful things, but our brains change on a daily basis, and sometimes our brains doesn't want to play ball, and that's fine. But so sometimes there will be days that I feel like I've just, you know, you come off stage and you go, I just sort of went through my material there. That sort of gives you a bit of a wake up call. But yeah, I think it's been definitely in the last 2 years that I've been really working on that side of things, and making sure that, like, you know, you're talking to the audience and you're not afraid of the audience and you're letting them in, which is, again, my style of comedy as well, because I'm like conversational. So I think if you're doing that, then you need to invite them in, really. Otherwise, you're just having a conversation with yourself. So.
What about the nerves and the anxiety? When you mentioned BGT, you said you were nervous about the earpieces, but not for yourself, for your material. Do you get anxiety before going on stage?
I do get nervous, but I was once told, I used to have like an acting teacher when I was at school, and he said to me once, he was like, you should be nervous, or you should be nervous that you're not nervous. And that's always stuck with me, because I like, I think there's a difference between like confidence and not being aware of what you're about to do, because I think sometimes if you go on stage and you're like, and I'm good. For me personally, if I'm like that, then I can start to get a bit lazy and I'm not on the ball. Whereas like when I'm on the side of the stage, I like sort of pump myself up and I go, right, come, okay, let's go. Do you know what I mean? And that I suppose you could argue that's a sort of nerves in itself. But I when I do the music, I tend to be sort of, I don't know, I tend to be less nervous when I do the music, which is strange because you have to get the words right. Do you know what I mean? Because the songs I do are so quick. If I fluff up a word, then it's slightly more difficult to cover it. Right. Do you know what I mean? Because the beat of the song is still going, so I can't be like, I'll just calm it down and just talk about something else. I have to go with the beat of the music. But I tend to not get as nervous for that bit. But I think that's I guess that's probably because I've been singing longer than I've been doing comedy. That could be why. Yeah. Probably. But I think nerves are good. I think if you channel in them, I've definitely had times in my life where I've let nerves get the better of me, and you're like, what was the point? You know? And the funny thing is as well, I always find with anything creative is we put ourselves through this and we go, oh, I'm so nervous. And it's like the only person who has put yourself in that situation is you. No one else has told you to do this. Like, no one's gone, you must do this, otherwise you can't see tomorrow. You know, you've gone, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. So then, be nervous. That's great. But there's no point being like, oh, I can't do this. Because it's like, well, you've got yourself here. So it's only you to blame. So you're going to be doing it anyway. So you might as well enjoy the experience. But I think nerves are all part of it. And, you know, when you get something big, there are going to be nerves. You know, like I remember the first time I did a charity gig at the Comedy Store. And it was like me, and then I was in between Sean Walsh and Ramesh Ranganathan. And I was like, I literally was like, oh my gosh, I'm terrified. But then, you know, also you've got to say, I was terrified, but then I was also like, you know, you can do this. You've been booked. You're here for a reason. You need to now show why you're here. Do you know what I mean? And so it was terrifying, but also learning experience, amazing to meet incredible comedians and to be on stage with them, and then sort of feeling like to yourself, right, I'm in this industry. I've not been in it as long, but everyone has their first steps. Everyone has their firsts. And then, so sometimes you just need to just focus on yourself. And that's something that I've learned in recent years as well, is just worry about you. Because in terms of like social media now and everything, you could spend days looking at everyone else's successes and being like, how am I going to do that? But then think about how many hours you're wasting of sending emails and sending clips and trying to get yourself your next gig by looking at other people and what they've done. And I think you just need to be happy that, like, always happy. Like, what am I trying to say here? Like, not comparing yourself to other people. I think I love watching other people's successes. I love watching people smash it. I think it's the best thing in the world because you want everyone to do well. You don't want just yourself to do well. Otherwise, I mean, that's a bit boring, isn't it? So I think it's focusing on yourself and being part of something rather than comparing yourself constantly. Yeah. That was very profound, wasn't it?
Yeah. Why not? So lockdown, I often ask people about their lockdown experience, but I know something of your lockdown experience because you were active on social media, scoring 200,000 plus views with your performances online. So did that change your perspective in terms of live performance versus online performance? Did it help you make new decisions about what you're going to do going forward?
I actually, so I didn't have a great lockdown. I really didn't like. People were saying, oh, it was great. I wrote, I did this, I did that. I was like, I was in a pit of despair, because I'm very like active. All of my jobs in my 20s. So basically, I was doing comedy. I just started doing comedy basically. So I was like, it was when lockdown happened. I'd had all my sort of like firsts booked in. Like sort of. I had all my first trial spots booked in for sort of the bigger clubs.
Yeah.
So obviously they all got cancelled. So that's where I was in terms of the comedy. I'd just done a TV programme for Sky. And then I was working in a restaurant as well. So I worked in restaurants like all of my 20s, shock, actress working in a restaurant. But again, you're on your feet. You're on your feet all day. Yeah. I would be working all day and then going to gigs in the evening, going to auditions, doing this, doing that, doing the other. And I know it's the same, my story is boring. Like it's the same as so many people. We're all in the same boat. But I lost my job really early on, so I wasn't furloughed or anything. And then I was in that bracket of people who wasn't, because I was doing PAYE and performing. I didn't earn enough to warrant the, what's it called? The grants that they gave to other people. So all of a sudden I was like, what am I supposed to do? So I had sort of a few months. But I started, at that point, I started doing like reels and stuff all the way back then, and they started to get a bit of traction and that kind of thing. So I put on that more, and then I did some more sort of like COVID songs, which got loads of views, which was great. So I was really enjoying that side of things. What is it about social media? I don't know. I find it. I don't understand TikTok. I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm really trying. I'm not too good at like sort of being really natural. Sometimes some people are amazing at sort of like doing blogs walking down the street. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if I try and film myself talking down the street, as soon as I see someone walking the other way, I have to put my phone away. I was like, I can't talk. I feel incredibly embarrassed. But no, social media was good during lockdown, and I think it gave me like many people, it gave me a sort of release, and it sort of made me feel like I was doing something. Because I remember at the time as well, I was living with a best mate and an ex-partner, and they both were working from home. So like every morning they'd like open their laptop, and so I'd get up and I'd like open my laptop too. I'd be like, right, what am I going to do today? Duolingo. So yeah, no, it was quite a learning curve during lockdown. But then, like I said, so I went into started working in schools really like in the September. Yeah. So that gave me a purpose. That gave me, I had to leave every day and like be in school every day. There was no remote learning unless someone in the class got COVID, and then you'd be off for 2 weeks. But it was full on. So I think that sort of like gave me the confidence, and it also sort of, it took me a while to get back into the swing of things, I think, really as well, because like teaching, having full-time jobs. Yeah. It is hard sometimes to balance it, and so it's taken me a while to actually get back to gigging as much as I want and that kind of thing. And now it's getting there, which is amazing, and I feel really happy about how it's all going. But I think it has taken me a few years, which is the same for everyone, and it's like, it's fair enough as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, cost of living crisis, life's expensive. Yeah. We need to make sure that we can still feed ourselves and follow a dream. So sometimes you have to be realistic about these things. And so it wasn't like I can't do this, because like I said, I've really enjoyed learning how to be a teacher, and I do think it's helped. Lots of comedians are ex-teachers, and I think it has sort of like helped that side of things as well. So yeah, it's been a journey, but it's feeling good now, which is good.
So Britain's Got Talent, big television competition, but you've done other competitions. So you were nominated at last year's Musical Comedy Awards.
Yes.
Longlisted in Funny Women year before. How do you feel about competitions in general?
I think competitions are good. I think, again, experiences I've had, it's something to work towards, I think. Do I think it's something that you can hone your set, and it's a way of showing what you can do and being recognised for it as well. I did, which was it? To Say You Think You're Funny, which was great. And that was like, you know, when you do that, that's obviously for new acts.
Mm-hmm.
So that giving you, I got to the semi-finals with that one. So it's like, you know, that gives you an opportunity as a newer act to go to Edinburgh and to perform at the Gilded Balloon. And like, do you know what I mean? Like that's a huge thing. That's sort of like an insight into the world. Musical comedy awards, I love musical comedy awards, but it's also about perseverance as well.
Yeah.
And I think that as a comic is something that you have to learn like straight away. You know, you have to be able to persevere. Otherwise, I mean, what's the point? What's the point? You have to pick yourself back up. So I think I did musical comedy awards I did musical comedy awards like 4 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And like first 2 times didn't make it through. Third time got through to the semis. And then the final time got through to the finals, do you know? So then you can see that progression, and you can see like, right, you know, I've earned my stripes. I'm getting better. Do you know what I mean? So I think competitions are good. My experience with them have been good.
Yeah. Do you find that when you're competing against your peers, do you find yourself? I don't think that you do, because you don't strike me as that kind of personality. But do you sort of find yourself, because you're in competition, thinking, oh, well, I would have done that better, or I'd have taken that from a different perspective or something?
No. I don't think. No, that's not how my brain works. Right. I don't think. Maybe I should be more like no. I don't think so. No.
Do you watch comedy?
Yeah.
You're able to sit down and enjoy comedy without dissecting it and comparing yourself?
Yeah, I can. I just think that, like, I don't know. I think I want everyone to do well. Oh no, that doesn't sound right. What am I trying to say here? I think it goes back to what I said before about sort of, you know, worrying about yourself. You can see and appreciate when a joke works. And then, you can also see as well when a joke doesn't quite work or that kind of thing. But I would never, I don't know, I think when you're doing a competition or that kind of thing, I would want to win something being the best of the best. So if I'm literally sitting in a room about to do a competition, I am making sure that when I get up on stage, I am trying to do my best in what I've written. Like I said, knowing what's going on in the room, taking it all in. Whereas if I'm sitting there and going, actually, what you just done up there doesn't quite work, how on earth is that going to make my set any better?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Is that valid?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Valid, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
So you said about you wanting to perform, you said about you wanting to do singing and comedy.
Yeah.
You sing about taking actions and fulfilling dreams. Are you living your dream?
Do you know what? I would say, at the moment, I'd say I am. Obviously, there could be more money in the bank. But I truly believe that, like, and I think I said this on Britain's Got Talent, but I do always say it, like, as long as you've got, like, a little bit of burning desire, if you've still got that, like, you just need to keep on going. And when I was, like, 21, I always think, like, I've always wanted to be on stage, and I've always wanted to do that. And I think over the years, I've now realised that, like, I just want to be working in comedy and the arts full time. So I haven't, like... But what that is can be lots of different things. So like I said, I teach music. That's in the arts. So that's one section of the arts. And in the evenings, I go and tell comedy. That's another section of the arts. And so I think now I can see, for the first time ever, I can see, hopefully, we look back in 2 years and it's like, yeah, she's packed it all in. But I can see everything up to this point. Hopefully it seems to be working itself out, because, like, you know, I do think I've, you know, when you leave drama school, because I have, like, been in that industry from an early age, you sort of, like, you think that, well, I thought when I left, I was like, right, that's it, I'm going to be in a West End show and I'm going to smash it. And it didn't happen that way. And I'm so glad that it didn't, because I've had the most incredible experiences from it. But also at the same time, I think like there must be a reason why I'm still doing this, because life would be so much easier if I had have done something different. Do you know what I mean? Like it is hard work, and you do make sacrifices, but it's like I said before, I have put myself in this situation. Do you know what I mean? No one else has made me do it. So it's that thing of, sometimes you go, oh, it's really hard. It's this, that's the other. You've got the decision. So if you're putting yourself into that situation, then you have to make the best out of it, because it's no one else is going to do it for you. And I think that's something I've realised as well. It's like, you have to put in all of the work. You can't sit on your laurels and wait for someone else to do it for you, because while you're doing that, someone else is getting ahead of you by being more proactive. But that's taken time. In my 20s, I just sort of like, oh, my agent's not getting me any auditions. It's like, why aren't you doing anything about it? Do you know what I mean? Be better. Be better. But so I'm finally getting to the point where I am sort of getting to what I want to be. I'm not there yet. I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm very aware of that. But it is that thing of, training to be a teacher, that's allowed me to be a music teacher. So it's all sort of like coming full circle. Yeah. I never thought that. Like, I never thought in my 20s I would be a qualified teacher, ever. Like, it was completely just like that. But then it turns out that, I do really enjoy it. Yeah. And again, it's something that I've now been able to, like fit in with performing as well. Yeah. So I can teach music, and then I can go and do something else, or I can teach something else, or that kind of thing, and then I can perform and I can write, and I've got the time to write, which I think before I didn't have the time to do. When you're teaching, you've got a class, you literally know Monday to Friday, and then all the marking and everything. It is like it's a lot. So it's all sort of balancing itself out. So we're on the road, I think. But again, it could all change. That's the beauty of life. It could change. So yeah, it's just about feeling good and trying to just enjoy it.
So what so far then have been your best and worst gigs? Best and
worst gigs. Yeah. Like I said, yesterday was a highlight. Yeah. I did for GWAC, which is the Great Western Air Ambulance Service. Mm-hmm. I did a charity gig for them at Bristol Old Vic, and like we were saying about sort of being in the room, and just being present and just being relaxed and just loving it. There was that's like Bristol Old Vic is like incredible. Never been able to perform there, and so as we were talking about nerves as well, I just decided to stage and I was like, right, I'm just really looking forward to this. Do you know what I mean? I'm really looking forward to going out there and seeing what happens. And like for the first time, sort of, I put a pause in on purpose to try and get a heckle. Do you know what I mean? Like there was a joke that I was making, and I was like, right, I want to see if anyone shouts it out. And I could just notice myself doing things that like I've not done as much before, and I just loved it. It was just great. So that was an amazing one. And I do think as well, like this year, like as I said to you before, when I was younger, I wanted to be in West End shows and that kind of thing. And then, ironically, this year, well, when I did the Britain's Got Talent audition, it was on the Palladium stage, Bristol Old Vic yesterday, and the Hammersmith Apollo. So like in my beautiful, weird comedy way, I've done it. I can tell 7-year-old me that she did it, doing her own stuff. So that's like a beautiful thing. I've had some musical comedy awards final was amazing. And like I said, I'm starting to MC more, and I'm really enjoying those and sort of learning that side of things as well. Worst gigs, I mean, where do we start? There's one that always sticks out in my mind, where I think it was just after COVID had finished, and it's still going, isn't it? But like just after sort of the main lockdowns had finished, and I had like sort of like a personal thing happen, so I probably wasn't in the best mindset. And I think sometimes, again with comedy, I think it's okay sometimes to say, actually, do you know what? I don't think I can do this week because I'm not feeling 100%, you know, but because we want the gigs and stuff, we go, no, I'll just do it anyway. And so I was in Essex, which is obviously where I'm from. So I was like, it's going to be great. When I say I didn't get a laugh 20 minutes, right? And I just, as soon as I got out on stage, I just knew that I didn't feel like I wasn't in the room. I just wasn't doing well. I could feel myself sucking the energy out of the room, and I could see like these. It was a really big room, and although all the tables were obviously spaced out, and I could just see, and no one was sort of connecting with what I was saying. And then I got so like sort of nervous and in my own head that my microphone hand started to like shake. So I was like, you know, when you just like get me off stage, and then right at the end, this man just like looked at his watch to look for the time, and I was like, okay, this is awful. And I got off the stage, and then obviously, you know, pretended that, I love that, that was so great. And then I went outside to wait for my cab back to the station, and this woman came up to me, who was in the audience. She went, "Oh, so what do you normally do?" And when I tell you that was like a dagger in my heart, I was like, I'm trying to do this. But I just tried to get the taxi. Don't cry. But then that's the thing, it's like inexperience as well. Or not inexperience, but being at the start of your career, not knowing how to handle it. Beautiful to be a bit rubbish sometimes, because then it really, that's quite good for giving you a bit of a reality check, you know? If you're amazing all the time, you probably can't get better.
Yeah. That's
another profound thing. Look at me, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah. Well, which brings me neatly to the next question, because
yes,
I like to ask people from all the lessons that they've learned what philosophies they've developed, but you've been philosophical throughout, so I feel like we've covered it.
We have, haven't we, actually? Yeah, I love that. I've just started reading Steve Martin's book, actually, which I love Steve Martin. I think he's just amazing, and the fact that he plays banjo is just like iconic. Can I remember what the book's called? No, but you guys can check it out online. It's very good.
Abi, how can we find out about you, where we can come and see you perform?
So you can come and see anything on Instagram and TikTok. So it's at Abi Carter-Simpson. I'll say that again because I slipped on my own teeth there. So it's at Abi Carter-Simpson UK for Instagram and TikTok. At Abi Carter-Simps for Twitter, although I don't really use, X, but I don't really use that anymore, to be honest. And if you want to come see me, if you just go onto my Instagram, I have a new website pending, but it's not finalised just yet. But if you go onto Instagram, I'll have all my list of shows. I'm also starting my own comedy night on every second Wednesday of the month. So it's called The Laughing Lock Comedy Club, and it's going to be at the Canal Cafe in Warwick Avenue, which is just near Paddington Station. So if you want to come and see some fab comedians and me hosting and telling jokes, then please come along.
And so finally, how, Abi, would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
Comedy in a nutshell. Expressive, wild, fun. I'm just doing words, aren't I? I could form a sentence, Abi. Full sentences, please. Yeah. I think comedy is a beautiful, expressive art form that brings people together, divides people's opinions. And the fact that comedy is subjective, like so many different art forms, I think is a beautiful thing. And I also... I love the fact that you can be like Marmite to people. Like some people think that, you know, the best thing ever, and other people go, absolutely not for me. Because it means that the world is a colourful place, do you know? And I also think comedy is a brilliant escapism. It's given me a purpose for creating and a purpose for parts of life. So it's something that should be celebrated and respected. It's also just a lot of fun.
Abi, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much. That was exactly what I knew it was going to be. So thank you.